Okay. Gifts of altered states and why psychedelics are the future of psychotherapy. So that's the name of the presentation. So first of all, I wanted to introduce myself since some of you haven't met me. So just so you kind of get an idea of who's presenting, what my experience is and why am I talking about this. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and actually, essentially, why I got into psychology, I was always interested in studying something like transpersonal psychology, something that's not necessarily like a Western traditional clinical psychology. So that's always been my interest. And I actually went to school. It was Institute of Transpersonal Psychology. If some of you who's in the Bay Area know about this, it was in it's still in Palo Alto. It's now called Sophia University, and it's completely different vibe. So, but there was the school, and actually the school did a lot of research, maybe not research, but they had a lot of information, and they taught a lot about this idea of altered states of consciousness, which are psychedelics are now, psychedelics is basically oh, sorry, just mute yourself if you're entering. Oh, how's the babies? So, yeah, and I studied meditation. I did a lot of like Kundalini yoga and holotropic breathing before experiencing psychedelic altered states of consciousness, but it's always kind of been my interest and passion. I always thought like, okay, there's something beyond this normal state. There's something else, because I would even like as a child, I would experience maybe sometimes this profound state of peace and connection. And a lot of times when I'm in normal state, I would wonder like, what are those other states? And since 2011, I've been pretty involved with personally and professionally with psychedelics. I mean, I did MDMA trainings and Ketamine Assisted Psychotherapy trainings. I also did, I volunteered with MAPS. If those of you who are read anything about psychedelic research, MAPS is the organization that's leading this. And it's Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies. And they're basically the ones who are pushing this to be legalized as something to be added in psychotherapy. And they're just a great organizations. And they also do Zendo projects at Burning Man, which I was a part of. And basically, Zendo project is a place at Burning Man for people to come in who are experiencing the states to get help if they need. It's like a safe space in a very crazy environment that provides this help. So I've done that work with them, which is pretty amazing. And most importantly, I myself experienced a lot of value from healing through this altered state of consciousness, including psychedelics. And I can tell you that amount of the just benefit that I got from it really makes me so passionate about this work, because it just completely transformed me as a person, transformed my life, and just added so much joy and beauty and excitement and all the amazing things that this work, this healing can open us up. So I'm personally very passionate about this movement that we've been entering recently. So as you might know, we are in psychedelics renaissance. So initially when psychedelics were discovered, they were actually legal. LSD was legal, people were using it for therapy, MDMA was legal up until 1985. And after that, something happened in the political scene, and there was this drug war. So basically, we just really heavy this war on drugs started, where there was just a lot of miseducation about psychedelics, and basically where people were receiving this information that is just, they're terrible, they destroy your brain. It's like that famous commercial with your brain on drugs that has a frying egg, and it's just really created a lot of fear in the common culture. And recently it started changing. So if you haven't already, I highly recommend How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan. It's a book, but it's also a series on Netflix. And I watched a Netflix series recently, and it's pretty good. It's the way he presents it and describes it. It's actually, I really enjoyed it. I highly recommend it for anyone who's interested in this work. And also ketamine now legal. And MDMA assisted psychotherapy is currently under review to be legal in 2023. So we're almost there. So you can see how after years of prohibition and really thinking like, it's all bad, all drugs are bad, let's never do anything with them. We're now really entering the stage where there's so much excitement about psychedelics, there's so much really benefits. There's a lot of research. Last 10 years, there's been a lot of research on them, and they're actually moving towards making it legal, which is just huge, huge news to this. It's a game changer to this field because it's been underground and prohibited for so long. So psilocybin is also under research, and so they say in the next 2 years, but you know how in Oregon, it's now actually legal to do psilocybin services. They don't call it therapy, so we don't know what's going to be like, but it is legal in Oregon. And in some cities like Oakland, it's decriminalized, which means it's like lowest priorities for law enforcement to pursue, to punish those who do this for their own benefit. So really exciting news. It's like everywhere, people are talking about it. So I just thought that I'll do this presentation, also share my experience, my knowledge, and also can have a conversation about it. What do you guys think about this movement? So I'm a psychotherapist, and I don't know about you guys who experience traditional psychotherapy, or maybe you're a therapist yourself, but sometimes I felt in my journey with psychotherapy, I just felt so frustrated with kind of like with limitations of it. And I found this quotes that I really like that kind of illustrated perfectly. This Krista Smith, Saidi, just found it in an article, and she said, I often witness clients relying too heavily on the ordinary mind. It painstakingly analyze themselves and their problems with little payoff, as if the ordinary mind is the only and best tool for healing. Yeah, right? Like we think we can figure it out. We think we can like just analyze and figure out our problems in our minds, and then it doesn't seem to work. We feel stuck, in part because we are relying too heavily on figuring out our problems. When we only use the ordinary mode of consciousness, our problems can become self-perpetuating. We are like a person stuck in a hole who digs with a shovel rather than climbing out with a ladder. Sometimes, and by the way, so I think altered states and psychedelics can become that ladder that help us to climb out of our hole of analysis and rationalization, trying to understand things. And sometimes we can't see the ladder with the ordinary mind. At times like this, dropping the effort to figure ourselves out can be the best medicine. That doesn't mean dropping the effort to get better, but giving the intellect a rest for a while. And I very much agree with this, because as a psychotherapist, I see that clients who are very intellectual, I'm myself a very intellectual person, so I like to analyze, understand, and reflect. But I can see how it becomes a limitation when we only rely on our mind to really, to heal, really, to become better, because the mind is very limited. And we need something. Sometimes we just need something to go beyond it, to go through it. So, and a lot of times we just get into this identity trap. right? We just identify with it. We identified with the mind. We identify with who we are, and meaning we have a fixed self-view. We think we're this person, we're this whoever we think we've been, and it's like a prison. We can't see beyond it. So, but then it's like the question: if we're not our minds, then who are we? How do we go beyond it? In my experience, healing and transformation doesn't happen in the mind. The mind doesn't let us change too much, because it likes to understand and kind of control things. And I like this phrase that this Milton Erickson says. He says all transformation occurs in a trance state. And there are ways to go beyond the mind, even in traditional psychotherapy, but also tools are hypnosis, meditation, drumming. No, I put dumbing. I guess dumbing the mind, and of course psychedelics. And those, so before again getting into psychedelic work and really experiencing myself, I did experience things like hypnosis and meditation and drumming, and they were all very beneficial. I just sometimes think for a Westerner who's very stuck in their mind, it can be quite hard to kind of disidentify, to go beyond it. And psychedelics can be powerful tools that for surely will get you there because they're so powerful. But of course, they're gentler methods like hypnosis, meditations, and drumming for those who might be sensitive to something like psychedelics, who have some experience. If you had like psychotic breakdowns, of course, then psychedelics enough for you, and then you might do something gentler. So what are the gifts of those altered states? So again, when I say altered states, they're also called non-ordinary states of consciousness. It's basically something about going beyond our normal states. And you can even, oh, yeah. You guys can mute yourself. I can hear some noises. So it's you can even try it now, unless you're driving or somewhere where you can't shift your perception, but you can kind of even now allow yourself to say, if you let go of your rational mind right now and just let your mind drift and focus on your body, that could already produce like a shift in your perception, so you can start seeing things a little differently. Of course, it all comes from really connecting to something deeper in ourselves, this altered state, going beyond the mind. Again, the mind is actually what I think is the most, creates the most barriers in entering those states. And psychedelics just sometimes they just break the mind in a good way, and sometimes in a harmful way, in which I'm going to talk a little bit more about the risks. So those altered states of consciousness, sometimes we experience this profound states of connection and unity and peace. I don't know about you guys, and you're always welcome to share your own experience. You can put it in the chat or after. Oh, can you mute yourself if you're just entering? Thank you. And sometimes it's just this profound state of peace and connection and unity with the whole world. It's like you actually feel like you're so much bigger than your little limited self. You just feel like you're one with everything. You actually feel this really interconnectedness, something that Native Americans talked about, right? We all my relations. And for me, it was almost, it's like, I didn't get it until I experienced it, thanks to this altered states. Because it's like, before we experience it, it's a concept. It's something we can talk about, we can read about, we can fantasize about, but before it becomes a lived experience, it's very hard to connect to this. And that's why psychedelics really offer us this opportunity to have a lived experience of these states. Another benefit is that people can get really deeply in touch with their current emotional state. I remember, every time I'm in one of those states, it's like I'm suddenly very aware of what I'm feeling, versus before I might not even realize that I'm feeling it, because I'm, again, thinking or disconnecting a little bit from what I'm feeling. And now it's like there's no doubt. There's like this state that's amplified. So we say that an altered state, whatever you feel inside is amplified. Another really beneficial thing is distance and quieting of this inner critic and judging mind. So again, I don't know about you guys that was on the call, but I used to have a very strong inner critic who would just really like kill the buzz every time. It would just be like, well, I don't know. I don't know about this. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Is it real? Yeah, I don't know. And so every time I would go kind of in this state, something in me would like judge it, analyze, and it was just really hard to, again, break through those judging, like super ego, we call it in psychology, right? That's like analytical part of us, or judging mind. Also, self-acceptance. Oh my God, the place of no self-rejection. How beautiful it is to experience a complete love for yourself in those states. It's like suddenly you see your own beauty. And I remember sitting in the one ceremony, and the shaman, she was saying, "You are the light of God." And I was, and then the Westerners say, like, what? Like, or we might intellectually understand that, yeah, we're like light of God. We are wonderful, but it's very different from having like a lived experience of your own significance, own beauty, own, that's like wonder, the wonders that we are. It's so hard for us to connect to that state in a normal environment. We just kind of take ourselves for granted, or worse, we criticize ourselves and we belittle ourselves, and we don't see our own gifts and beauty. And that's one of the things I think psychedelics really going to change, is that people are going to recognize their own power and beauty and love, and that's going to really change the world, I think. And it's really going beyond the mind. It's really those altered states really help us to shift our perspective, this expand of consciousness. I know that throughout my history, I experienced states of like severe depression, where I was like so stuck in the negative view of the world and myself, and I just couldn't get out. And spending like a lot of time there, it just so narrow, this view so fixed. My mind was so fixed on this. And I would really benefit from like something like ketamine assisted psychotherapy then, but it wasn't legal. That was like 13 years ago. I was 25. I was going through very significant depression at the time. So those are the gifts. Let's talk about potential risks. It's really, a lot of times these days, psychedelics become kind of like romanticized, or we all only see the positives, and we get like really excited. I know myself, I get like really excited, and I'm like, oh my God, everybody should do this. So I worked on becoming more centered, meaning we need to also look at the risks, because yes, they are potential to, they're powerful tools, but every powerful tool has a negative side. And we do need to include those in the conversations, because otherwise we just become very, I don't know, we become one-sided and become blind to this potential harms. And psychedelics do have potential risks and can be potentially harmful. For example, the experiences can be overwhelming and frightening, so-called bad trips. And with certain settings, with a guide, it's not likely that will happen. It's very, you might have an overwhelming, a frightening experience, but if you have somebody there with you to guide you through this, it's not going to become re-traumatizing. Unfortunately, if you're doing it recreationally, or if you don't have experienced guides, they can be re-traumatizing. So part of the work that I do integration therapy, so psychedelic integration therapy, and I worked with clients who experienced ayahuasca ceremonies, or even pot. They smoked pot and re-traumatized. They had an experience of fear and panic, and experience a very difficult state, probably from trauma. And they were not able to move through that. So they experienced re-traumatization. And it's actually a very common thing to happen, because the psychedelics really lower your defenses. So everything, all the traumatic experiences that you've been defending, suddenly you become undefended and everything comes up. Of course, that's the potential healing. But if you in the wrong environment, it's can be very harmful as well. And another potential risk is that client is more vulnerable to potential abuse in that state. Unfortunately, like during MDMA studies, there were some crossing of boundaries from therapists who was really abusing their power, and the client was in that altered state, vulnerable, trusting, and she was hurt. So that's also something we have to be mindful of how it can be, how client is so vulnerable in that state. Or if you are experiencing it, then you really have to be very careful about who you do it with. And there's mild, so psychedelics are not addictive per se. They don't have any biological addiction as far as I understand, but there's mild psychological addiction potential. I don't know if you know of some people like that, but I know people who would just, every time they had some struggle, they would just go to the ceremony, and they would it just becomes that, okay, I feel this discomfort, so I need to then go into the state and work through it in the state, or I need something, and that's needing something. That's potentially, that's what addiction is, right? It's like needing something from outside to our to experience our healing. So that's a potential risk. So now I'm going to just wanted to talk about a few medicines that are particularly, that are legal now. And I wanted to just introduce you guys to them. Maybe some of you haven't heard about this. So I'm going to talk more in depth about Hape, which is a sacred medicine of Amazon. And the main ingredient there is tobacco, and ketamine assisted psychotherapy. And I wanted to include other things, but I realized it's just going to be too long, and I don't want to be talking too much. It's already a lot in this presentation. So if you have questions, or if you want to talk more about MDMA and psilocybin, we can do that. But I'm just going to talk about Hape and ketamine, which are both legal. So if you watched How to Change Your Mind, you might have seen this beginning of episode 1, where this woman kind of shoots something up his nostril, and that's Hape. It's interesting, in the series, he didn't talk too much about this. I mean, he didn't even name that's what it is. It's so interesting to me. I was like wondering if he's trying to protect it from potential abuse, because anyway, that's just my musings on this. But Hape is a sacred medicine. I even brought I forgot how it's called, but there's like anyway, but it's administered through a stick like this, and it's like gently the medicine is put in here, and then it's blown into the nostril, and it's used in Amazon. So it's a sacred medicine, and it's really meant to clear the body, the energy, but it also helps to focus and sharpen the mind. It really has like a detoxing effect. It does produce an altered state of consciousness. So sometimes some realizations might come, or you do experience the shift from your normal state. So you might do it. Some people do it before meditation. So kind of get into that little altered state, disidentification from the mind, getting connected to the body more, really feeling your body. And it works on your body, clears all the energetic blocks. You can have like a purging effect from it. It just means something that's in the body needs to come out. Has a calming, grounding effect, usually in emotions, and lasts for a while after you administering it. And the tribes are using it for, like, if a person starts to get sick, they use it for like clearing sinuses, and helping to combat any colds. And it's actually can be used in conjunction with treatments for addiction and mental illnesses. But this medicine is actually not the one that has been studied too much. Has been kind of unknown, but I personally really love it and love working with it. So I thought I'll give a little spiel about that. It just really, for me, it's like coming back to myself. It's something that if I feel so kind of lost and a balance, I'm through doing this ritual, I'm coming back to myself, and I love it very much. So ketamine assisted psychotherapy is the only legal psychedelic therapy that's is available right now. And again, MDMA is said to be legal in 2023, and psilocybin is legal in Oregon. So I think it's legal in Oregon starting next year. So, and it's tons of potential there. Very exciting how it's going to go. With ketamine available now, so it can be very beneficial for people with anxiety, bipolar depression, addiction, OCD. So all these things are shown to have benefit from ketamine assisted psychotherapy. And with ketamine, it's interesting. Ketamine started when they learned about it, right? Or initially, it's been used as a dissociative, like a horse tranquilizer. They say, and it does have like this kind of dissociative effect. And the way it can be used in psychotherapy is that it induces the state of comfort and relaxation. And you have this like warm feeling and a little like floating experience. So you can have a increased empathy and compassion. Again, biggest benefit that I see for the states in psychotherapy is that we can go beyond, or we can reduce ego defenses. So basically, if you, for example, experience trauma or painful states, we usually have very strong ego defenses that are like protecting it. So we have very strong natural mechanism in our psyche that protects those more vulnerable states. And this is great. That's helps us to survive. And in psychotherapy, it becomes a problem because we kind of relate to the world from those defended states. And in order for us to experience really, well, my sense is that we can't heal from a defense state. We can't heal from this protective mechanism. We really need to go beyond that, through it, to say, for example, to traumatic states to be healed. And that's what ketamine can provide, can really help to reduce those defenses and access those other states, go beyond our minds. Higher doses of ketamine can produce a very mystical experiences. That's not usually the dose that's used in ketamine assisted psychotherapy. So there's like a difference between psycholytic, they call it, and psychedelic psychotherapy, which psycholytic means it's less dose. So that's what ketamine assisted psychotherapy usually is. And then a higher dose, or something like, for example, something like LSD or psilocybin, then it's a more profound experience. Usually those are the ones that you can really experience mystical realms and state of wonders, and meet all the beautiful beings who will come talk to you, and even ego dissolution, which can be quite liberating. So again, if you watched How to Change Your Mind in Michael Pollan, there's an episode on psilocybin where the person who had OCD experiences tremendous relief from having his ego dissolve. It's like all this, his ego was so like controlling and trying to really like limit his experience, and finally wasn't there. So it was like this, oh, it's such a relief from that structure. And at the same time, ego dissolution can be very, very scary. It's like, it's basically, imagine that what you thought you were wasn't, it was like, oh, it's not there anymore. So it can be quite, I remember having this one experience once, and it was quite terrifying and liberating at the same time. And again, so shift of perspective and out of stuckness, that's a big, I think that's the biggest benefit and gift of ketamine, because mostly it's used for people with depression and suicide ideation. They had this study where people who had like, they were really suicidal, like ready to kill themselves, and they had ketamine, and they were shifted out of the state immediately. So the shift from the stuckness and really this negative perception, and it's quite, it's quick, it's dramatic. It's dramatic difference from where you were. So again, with ketamine assisted psychotherapy, it's a lot of changes in your mood, optimism. So, and actually this applies to any really psychedelic assisted psychotherapy. It's just ketamine is the only one that's legal now, so we can really, that's the one that's accessible. So it helps, but we can apply it to any psychedelic assisted psychotherapy. It's just they have, each medicine have its own kind of different flavor and a different purpose, I would say, and some things are better than for others. So ketamine is great for depression, for example, and really feeling like stuck in something. Really, when you want to feel like you want to shift and go beyond and get like a bird's view perspective. Sometimes people experience, they have this like floating feeling, and they're floating above the situation, and they can see the situation from a very different perspective, and they see things they didn't see before. And there's like all this insights and new awareness and new perspectives. That's quite amazing. So there's changes in self-identity. There's changes in mood, optimism, self-efficacy, reduction in fear and motivation. Yeah, it's like really experiencing yourself different. So a lot of people who have like very low self-esteem, they experience themselves as only those like something broken, something is wrong with them. They're broken, and suddenly they experience their own wholeness, and their whole self-view about themselves like shifts dramatically with that. Like they're like, oh, there's nothing wrong with me. It's good, you know. It's fine. I'm fine. And again, this mystical spiritual experiences that states of oneness, unity, connection with everything and oneself, and that really changes a person's view of self in the world, and puts us in touch with really infinite. I mean, if you want to call it God, or there's something that's beyond. Those are transpersonal realms, something that's beyond our minds and something beyond our limited, separated self. And also reintegration of past traumatic memories ketamine has been proven to be helpful with those. I mean, really, if we're talking about trauma, MDMA is really what's really going to be a game changer. It's, in the studies, 67% of people who were in MAPS sponsored phase 3 study, they were symptom-free after MDMA assisted psychotherapy treatment, 67%. So it's 2/3. And that was like very intense, complex PTSD. So that's amazing result. But that's MDMA. So and I'm very excited about MDMA. That's my personal, just something that really I can see for trauma. It's going to be really a game changer. So with that, yeah, why are psychedelics the future of psychotherapy? So far, I talked about the benefits, and there are some risks, for sure, and also the cost factor might be a barrier for people to receive this, because for MDMA assisted psychotherapy, they said each research participant cost them like $80,000. So I don't know how much it's going to cost when it's legal, but it's not. It's just once it's in the system, it's quite expensive. But so far, the benefits really outweigh the risks. There's so much potential, so much, so many benefits that are in those states. So I really, I know it's you take it with a grain of salt because I'm such a passionate fanatic about this, but I really do that. That's really going to change the field of psychotherapy. Are really going to offer new ways of work. And reduction in ego defenses really allows us to go deeper, faster, which is, again, not for everyone, because for some people that's not good, that's not healthy. So we can't take psychedelics like a panacea and say, oh, that this is it. It's still, we need to really be considerate about who can benefit and who's this not going to work for. And yeah, accessing our natural resourcefulness. So it just allows us to really realize that there's so much more to us than we think. And that's what's really exciting about those states, is that sometimes we just don't see how much we have inside of us, how much resources we have, how much love we have, how much power. All those things can become blocked in results of trauma, and on psychedelics and altered states, they can become accessible again. And that's really exciting. And it really allows for a completely new experience of the self and the world. Like we can really start feeling that we are all connected, and really experience that. And that's what I'm particularly excited about, because I feel like once we experience this interconnectedness, we're going to treat the world differently. We're going to treat each other differently. It's really feeling this connection. And yeah, it's just really, I see a lot of potential life-changing benefits for humanity in this work. And that will conclude my presentation. I will stop the recording now, so we can